Hey Jeff, just a heads up. Um,
Yep.
oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not. Just a heads up. I did start the live stream because we're supposed to be public and all that. So
Okay.
are live.
Okay. Will I be able to share my screen?
You sure can.
Okay. It may just be discussion, but I do have some images I can share if we need to.
Perfect. Just created kind of a title slide just to let people know what was going on. I was going to throw up. But whenever you are ready, just let me know.
And Sarah, technology has something at 6, right? Is there another subcommittee meeting at 6?
There is. Thank you
Okay.
for reminding me. I have a big purchase here.
Okay. I'll make sure we're done by 6.
Thank you.
Did you see Scott's email about the building site at 5:45 and the technology subcommittee at 6? Do they use the same links?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
We're
I'll
all
let
set.
them know.
Jeff and I are just waiting on him.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep. Sorry, Kim.
Hey, Scott. Right.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Frank. Hi, Sarah. Disregard my text.
Sorry about that. I was getting everything set up. Kim just ran down. I probably didn't communicate that very well.
Same link. Okay.
It's really weird. No matter where I put my camera, my eyes are to like the right side. I can't get it right. Now what are you gonna do?
Someone needs to let Ron in the meeting.
Sorry, I've got a little multitasking going on today. He should be all set.
He's in. Is he there? Yep, he's there. All right, I think we have everyone. This should be a fairly quick meeting. Just really one agenda item, and then I think Jeff wants to talk about something else. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk about the emergency system pole covers.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, one item we wanted basically bring back up to revisit was we've installed the emergency alert system throughout the district. We've got almost 250 pole stations throughout the district. And at one point, several months ago, before we started installing this, we talked about whether or not we should put the plastic covers over there, which prevents false alarms. And at that point, we decided to put that on hold because in almost 90% of those locations, we do have security cameras that cover those. So the likelihood of a false alarm is pretty minimal in those areas because students know that they would be covered and that they would be in trouble for doing that. Recently, we had a training with all the elementary principals, and Marina was part of that. And we discussed that with them, and most of the elementary principals was pretty universal. They were very concerned about not having the covers in those. And it wasn't for the kids that would do that as a prank and cause problems. It was more so the really, really young students that don't know any better and might look at this and pull it, not being able to control what they do. And especially some of these special needs students that would be looking to disrupt class and cause commotions and controlling those. And this would be a very easy way for them to cause some destruction and chaos in the building. So there's a lot of concerns from those elementary principals. They wanted us to revisit this and bring it back to building and site to, and their recommendation would be to put those pole station covers on there. Their feeling is, this isn't like a fire alarm or something else that causes problems. When these pole stations are pulled, it is the most extreme situation, and we're immediately going into a panic situation to get kids out of the buildings and run for safety. So Marina, did that pretty well cover their thoughts on this? I don't know if you want to add to it.
Absolutely. I think the overwhelming concern was really if it happens by accident or if it happens on purpose. It's the reaction that we're going to get from staff and students, the possible stampede, the possibility of not knowing what happened, not having enough time, and police come, and what that may do to the social emotional well-being of everyone, staff and students included. But really the chaos that can happen if such an alarm is triggered, whether it's true or not, it has the potential to really be a dangerous situation. So to have that extra layer of security by having a cover, just like we do on our fire alarms, is universal. That's what kids are seeing, and that's what they know, that the only time that you go for such a thing is an emergency situation. That's why it's covered. And especially our buildings with CLP or with an ISD wing or any students that may have a difficult time understanding, they had even more concern. But overall, all 12 schools were very concerned at the what if and the negative situation that could come about because of an alarm.
And Paul, I know you weren't part of that initial meeting, but I'm not sure if you had similar concerns at the secondary level or if it was less concern there because those students are a little more in control of their actions.
I think there's always concern, but I think the issue isn't so much the young kid who's not sure what they're doing, or to be honest with you, even a CLP kid who's not sure what's going on. I think it's more the impulsivity you see at the high school where you've got anger, right? So when you've got a kid who's, and we see this all the time, unfortunately, when there's a youngster who doesn't control their own emotions very well, which could be anything from a CLP student to just a very angry young person, that if they were to walk out and the impulsivity of just seeing that handle and yanking it would be my concern. Whereas as silly as it sounds, I think the cover is enough of a deterrent just to see it, and it takes away that impulsivity, if you will, because now it's not a two-step process. It's probably not as concerning as the elementary level, but still something that I would say it's not worth the risk, in my opinion, because the sheer number of kids, the times that kids are unsupervised, the fact that our larger buildings may not have people in them in all areas. So like late at night, perhaps, if a kid, or they're being funny and they don't realize what it is, and they're not even a student of ours, but they think it's okay just to pull one of these alarms, it does concern me because of the response that will occur, that we all know will occur. You know, and I think back to West Bloomfield, where I think theirs was, you know, it wasn't a real situation, but they dealt with a real situation as soon as an alarm went off and everybody showed up.
Thanks,
You
Paul.
would- Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so we just wanted to revisit that with you, and if we do have some pricing, we get bulk pricing on this, which is saves us about $10 per device if we order all of them at once. It is going to be over $30,000, so it's over our bid threshold, but we do have Master Electric under contract who's doing the work and has given us unit pricing for this in the past. So if building a site is okay with it, we'd like to recommend bringing this forward to the full board as a change order to Master Electric to do this. We've got two different price points, whether they do it on second shift or straight shift, and that may depend on when the high school students and middle school students do come back into the buildings. But we would have the elementary buildings, we would install those on second shift at this point to avoid having contractors in the building while students are in the building when they return next week.
So why did we make the decision to, I don't remember discussing not having covers. Did we discuss that before? We may have, but I just don't remember.
Yeah, we discussed it back, and this is probably going back to like January or February. We had this discussion perhaps before they started installing things. And I think at the time, the feeling was we were most concerned about false alarms, just people pulling a false alarm and what that would be. And we felt that the security cameras were enough of a deterrent to prevent that. What I don't think we discussed enough was the reaction to a false alarm, not getting a student in trouble, but what the reaction in the entire building would, the disruption to that state.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Anyone else is,
I'll ask a few of these things. So this, we're talking about a button here, right? Panic button kind of thing we're talking about. It's not like a pull station, or is it like a fire alarm? Or it's
They're a pull station, so it's a two-step process. Is you have to push in the button and pull down. That's what you currently have. It's exactly like your fire alarm device. What we're talking about is putting a plastic cover over there, like you have your fire alarms. So if that plastic cover is lifted, it's a high decibel sound that's put off there. And in most cases, it's going to scare the kid away, and they're going to leave that area. They're not going to go through with pulling the pull station. But they are ADA compliant, so that if you do, if a student has somewhat limited mobility, they are still able to open that plastic cover and pull the pull station.
So it's just kind of like put your hand up and push over, or it might be helpful when it comes to the full board to have one, Jeff, just to show us kind of thing, so we can kind of visualize it. That might be helpful. I have no problems with it though.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what the plastic cover looks like. It's very similar to your fire alarm, except they are done with the blue trim instead of the red trim to make sure people do know that's where the police is. So you do lift the bottom part of it and then reach in there, and the pull station's inside of that. And I can try to get a physical sample. I'm sure I can get one here in the next 2 weeks to bring to the board.
Yeah,
to
sure.
show 'em. But I'll make sure I got this image with me at the board meeting. What we'll do is, if this is okay, it would be a change order summary report. So we would attach that memo, and on the bottom of the memo, I would include a couple images of what this looks like. I'd include both the image of the pull station so people understand the two-step process, and then a picture of this so they understand what would go over the top of it.
I did see some walking around Miami, seeing some of those blue lights showing up on the outside by the playground and whatnot. That's those just recently came in. I saw over there, so that's great. Those are great things, so that they're outside at recess, they'll be able to see that there's an alarm. Was there audible on that outside or no?
Yes, there is. Yep.
Audible.
Yeah. Really, what it is that's intended to get their attention. Those kids will be out there screaming. They'll be very loud. That blue light's attention to get their attention, quiet down because something's going on, and then that person out there in the playground can direct those students where to go to next.
Okay, thank you.
So if that's okay, I got two other items I just wanted to hit real quickly before, I know you got a 6 o'clock meeting. So one is we pulled ahead the water bottle fill station project that we were doing across the district. We've got that out to bid right now. We're taking bids on that this Thursday. And what we would like to do, if it's okay with the building and site and the board, is to fast track that through the board at the next meeting. Normally we'd review it at building and site, and then it would come to the board 2 weeks later. We just feel these water bottle fill stations are a nice thing to have in the COVID area we're in. So we'd
Right.
like to pull that forward. So if it's okay, we would fast track that, assuming it's on budget and everything's good and we got a clean bid. We'd bring that to both building site and the board at the next meeting. Just want to know if there's any objection to that. If not, we'll plan for it.
I'm good with that because, you know, we're not going to have drinking fountains and whatnot. So,
Yeah, we felt it was important. It should help the situation. We've also got the additional access control locations. We talked about those regrets buttons that would be on the from the main office going into the building. We've also got that as part of that bid. So it's a safety enhancement. It's not COVID related, but it is also a safety enhancement. So we bring both of those packaged together. That work would happen on second shift throughout the school year. We'd like to start that as early as Christmas break if we get material in time.
will they be at all levels? I'm sorry, Laura.
Go ahead.
Yeah, district-wide. Those, both the water bottle fill stations and the access control is district-wide product. So it's a fairly large project.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't it at no cost from in the high school the last year or two?
Pardon me, I missed the first part of that question.
I seem to like there's something in my head saying like that there was grant or that there was no cost to it in the high schools.
I think it was partially paid for by a grant. I think you're right. I do remember that.
I know there has been grants and there has been some of the elementary schools that have done it through their PTOs. So
Yeah,
we did
like-
talk to all the principals and said, where would you like, we budgeted so many in the bond, where would you like them? So, they did look them at, obviously at a high school, you could put in 20 of them if you wanted to. So we were very selective where we added some on top of what they might have already done through their own funding.
I don't think that for some reason there was no cost to it and they were given water bottles.
I know Laura at Dakota, we had four, I think 4 were put in while I was there. We did 2 one year and 2 the next year through like parking and different funds that we had. So I think, I'm not sure how many you were looking to put in each building, but I think Dakota had 4 and I think Chippewa was putting them in as well. And we did get one through a grant. One of them was paid for through a grant.
Maybe it's just the one that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
So we're gonna review this at the next, we got another building site, next, on the 19th. We're gonna
Yes.
review them again, so we'll see
Yep.
the,
You'll have the bid results. I'll give you the exact numbers per building on that little summary spreadsheet.
okay, I'm good.
And the last thing is we just wanted to do a bond update for you at some point. Typically we do that in August, and obviously that was an appropriate time to do it. So at some point in the near future, we want to give you a little presentation of what we've done this summer, and then a preview of what's going to happen next summer, just to keep everybody updated. And it'll be something we can put on the website. But we're going to wait until your board meeting agenda is a little bit more cleared up, and we can have that on there. So it may be the next meeting. Chances are it'll be the first meeting in November. We'll want to present that to you and the rest of the board. So that was the last thing I had for tonight. I'll let you get on to your next agenda items.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for working with me on this.
Anytime.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Do I not attend the next meeting? Do I just get out?
Denise, you can either leave and come back in, or if it's easier, maybe just mute your microphone and your camera and stay in, whatever's easiest for you.
Mr. Sobal with us?
He is.
Hey, George?
So is that everyone for tech? Are we good to go?
Yes.
I believe we are.
All right, Scott, would you like me to give a little overview and get us started, or?
Go for it.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, it took me a second to unmute, but sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Soba. So we want to bring before the board tonight a fast track to purchase the laptops to take us one-to-one. Because we're using that CARES Act money, there's some very tight timelines, and because computers are in such high demand right now, we feel it's really important to get the order in as soon as possible. So we wanted to follow up with this purchase as soon as possible once it was approved by the board. So we did do a bid process, and we did this within Chippewa Valley. So this was Laura Harrington wrote the bid for us and processed it through the state site. We did a bid opening last Thursday. We received 9 bids. We received 10 bids. 1 bid was late. We went over the bids. Laura, John Morja, and I went over the bids last Friday, thought about some things over the weekend, and met with Scott and Laura this morning. So we were working on a budget. The previous 3,000 laptops we bought, we paid $576 each for. So that's what we were using as a budget number. And the bids we received were all over that budget amount. So that was a little disappointing. But what we did, because when Laura wrote the bid, the base bid asked for 5 years of full coverage, including accidental warranty, which we knew would be very expensive. But we thought, we're buying 9,000 laptops. Let's see what we can get with volume purchasing and see where those prices come in. And then we also asked each of the bidders to propose alternates with different levels of warranty, so we would have some flexibility if it did come in over budget. So I believe Kim sent you an Excel spreadsheet in the board packet comparing some of those numbers. What we would like to propose is an HP model laptop. It is a Windows 10 laptop. It is very similar to the 3,000 we just bought. The main difference is the processor. It has a slightly slower or less expensive processor, but that was one decision we felt because our students aren't doing CAD on these laptops. They're not doing 3D graphics. We thought it was something that wouldn't impact performance terribly overall, and something we could cut to get us within budget. And we also proposed taking an alternate warranty that CHI is the bidder that proposed this laptop. The alternate warranty is a little different type of warranty than we normally use, but it actually, it's an out-of-state company. It's a mail-in warranty type system, but they will actually provide us with a basic case for each of those 9,000 devices, which is not something we were planning on purchasing. So we get it's almost just like a bumper for the corners, but that'll save a lot of wear and tear on those laptops. And for the 4 years of the warranty, we get unlimited accidental or break fix warranty. So a kid could drop their laptop 10 times and we can ship it to the company 10 times to be repaired within the 4-year warranty period. So it does take a little time. It's about a 5 to 7 day turnaround to get a laptop repaired. But because we can make it within the budget amount, we can have spares. So we can provide a student with a spare to get them through. And it gives us accidental damage that we didn't think we'd be able to afford. And still keeps us within that budget. So we're not going over what Scott had budgeted in what we originally proposed to the board.
So just to clarify, these laptops have a 5-year warranty, just like the 3,000 that we bought. In addition to that, they have a 4-year break fix warranty, where if it's dropped or any damage is done, it will be replaced, fixed and replaced. The other 3,000 computers does not have that option. So we felt with the total number of computers that we're looking at purchasing, the break fix is probably the most important part of this purchase outside of the actual device. So again, it's a 5-year warranty like the other computers had. The added bonus is that it has 4 years of break fix, that if it's dropped or damaged in any way, it'll be replaced in any of those 4 years.
Are those going to the elementary school kids?
Our original thought was the laptops that are 4 to 6 years old that we have as checkout laptops right now would go into K1 classrooms. The numbers work out, and we thought that the kindergarten and first graders probably weren't taking them home every night. It'd be used more as needed, or if there was a school closure or an emergency. So we thought we could maintain those older laptops better. And then grades 2 through 12 will all receive the newly purchased laptops, whether it's part of the original 3,000 that we already ordered or the 9,000 that we're hoping to order this week.
What's the speed difference?
It's an i3 versus an i5. Honestly, I don't think the average student, unless they're trying to play high-end video games that really aren't part of our curriculum, they're really not going to notice that speed difference. I think it'll be perfectly fine for most of our programs are Chrome-based, are internet-based, word processing, PowerPoints, things like that'll be fine. You would really notice it if you were trying to play League of Legends or doing the like the online gaming leagues, but that's not really part of our curriculum or intention. So I don't see it as being a problem.
And I stand corrected. It's a 4-year. It's 4-year. It says in it 4-year, comma 5-star. I thought it said 5-year, not 5-star.
So normally we do like to purchase a 5-year warranty. This, like I said, this is a new type of warranty we haven't used before. I spoke to the VP of the company last week, who of course wanted us to buy his product. But it seems like a pretty good deal. It's the only way we could realistically get accidental on these devices and still have it come within budget.
So, yeah, so the speed sounds all right. I think I got an i3. I run my keyboards with it. I had no problems, and I need a lot of speed for those. So that doesn't seem like a big issue. This company, I mean, how did they come to us? Who have we spoke to other people who've used this company?
So C-High, yep, C-High is the bidder. They're based out of Auburn Hills. They are a national company. They actually are the company that just did our teacher desktops. Over the summer, I've been very happy with their service. They've been very responsive. Over the last couple of months, if like a monitor's out, I can call them and they will that day or the next day have a replacement monitor on site for us. They've been very helpful doing some troubleshooting with the new panels. So I've been really pleased with their service so far.
Are they local or?
Yeah, they're based out of Auburn Hills.
Mm-hmm. So we came to them with 9,300 computers or whatever it was. Were they willing to sweeten the pot for us?
Well, they when you look at including accidental, they are low bidder that includes accidental. So
okay.
I like that.
So the 3,000 we first ordered that are en route shortly, I hear, which is great. Those have a 5-year, and they have how about the breakable thing on those? Nothing on those?
No, those do not have the accidental, and it became, they did not offer us, it's called the Stay Mobile warranty, and we're proposing for this new bid, was not offered for those. And the cost of the accidental really made it made the warranty about the same price as the device. So with our new hardware techs, they'll be getting HP certified. So with those 3,000, that'll be more of an in-house fix. If there's still break fix warranty on those, but if a student drops it, then that'll be something our in-house technicians will work to fix.
Could we swing the 3,000 on a deal with that company to try to get those with the covers for the corners and, get that kind of looked at? I mean, is that possible? I mean, it sounds like a real good, proactive approach to not busting the computer up, just put some bumpers on there, and because that's where all the wear and tear is, that sounds really good. I don't know if there's something that could be looked into, Sarah. We know your plate's full, but while we're getting this huge purchase, would be, we'll wait for the board to look at for a little bit extra money to protect those 3,000, because that way every 2nd through 12th grader would have a computer that was protected, right?
Correct. Like you said, it can't hurt to ask. I can reach out to the gentleman I talked to last week and see what they would charge if we want to add that type of coverage to those first 3,000.
Yeah, because it seems like maybe perhaps it'd be a small price to pay for, pennies on a dollar in the long run over 5 years with a student carrying a computer home to school every day, and or else that they might travel while they're doing the work. So
sure.
I'd be interested in hearing that, how the rest of the board feels, but thank you.
I think when we looked at it originally, Sarah, wasn't it $170 or $180 per computer? So when we were looking at those 3,000 computers, it was $500,000. And then we started thinking, well, we could buy 1,000 more computers instead of buying that break fix.
Yeah. I think that original one was through HP though, so it might have been a little more expensive. So we could check with this company and see if they could, I'm sure they'd at least provide us pricing that we could decide was worth it or not worth it. And Mr. Bednar, those 3,000, the first 500 are in. They are at C-High and ready to get asset tagged, and we're going to start imaging them to get them out to kids. So they are slowly getting here.
Excellent. Yeah, I like to hear about the bumpers and so on like that. I mean, I think it's worth looking into. So yeah, if you could follow up with that company and, let them know every 5 years, we'll be looking for, another 12,000, whatever, 14,000 computers, whatever it is. And it'd be a nice contract for them if they'd be willing to work with us. So thank you very much.
So, I'm sorry if I missed this. This last purchase is gonna provide every kid K through 12 with a computer to take home. Is that what this is doing?
Yes. In general, the K-1 students won't be taking them home nightly, but there would be a computer available for every student. If we had to do another closure or anything like that, we would be 1-to-1.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay. So this
When
will
would these come in, Scott?
when
These 9,000?
4 to 7 weeks, another positive. So we'll have them definitely probably by the beginning of December, it sounds like at the latest.
Is this going to be like one rollout all at once? The district goes 1-to-1, or are we going to start at a certain level as we get computers? Or
There's going to be a few technical issues we have to work out with offsite filtering. The filtering system we have right now will accommodate the 3,000 we're just adding, but it's not going to accommodate those other 9,000. So there might need to be some shifting. We might have to do some collection of things that are checked out to students right now, or we might need to run 2 parallel filtering systems. That's something we're kind of working through, and a lot will depend, I think, on the health situation. If things are better in January and we feel like we're in a place we can collect student laptops, we can then, do the work we need to do and then get them checked out to students again and get them out to the proper places. If it's looking like we might need to do a school closure or something, we might need to do it a little differently just to make sure kids still have laptops. So we're gonna need to work through some of those details. I've got a few ideas, but a lot just depends on timing and where we're at with school at that time.
That's good to hear that the continuity of learning is first and foremost, so we don't leave anybody out. Okay, thank you.
All right. If there aren't any other questions or concerns, we'll be presenting this to the board tonight. And it is within budget, so we have enough Corona relief funds to pay for this. So we're in good shape.
Yes, sir. You might just want to mention to the board when it comes up about looking into those pricing and those other 3 for the bumpers and so on.
Sure.
Okay. All right, 6:30.
Right.
Thank you.
See you in about 10 minutes.
Hey, Sarah, are you there still?
Yes.
Hey, do we have that list, or how many? do we
Yep,
have on the list?
I just emailed it to you right before tech started. We only have 5 people who have requested to speak tonight.
Okay, we'll just, if we could work it the same way as great last week with you just, calling them on, getting them online, and I'll just make sure they're there and introduce, tell them, go ahead, same way. And then as far as this.
Absolutely. And then I just let Kelly's iPhone into the meeting. I believe that might be Kelly Geck. I just want to check. Kelly, is that you? I'll have to.
Yes, it is. Sorry, it took me a minute to
That's okay.
unmute.
Thanks, Kelly. I just want to make sure because we're kind of limiting the attendance. So I will leave you in and I'm going to go ahead and just mute until the formal meeting starts.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
test.
How we doing? We have everybody on tonight?
I'm here, Frank.
Yeah, here, Andy. I see Denise. I see Laura.
How come my picture's on your picture? Why is that? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's some settings on the screen there. You can tap on top and toolbar there. Change the views.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, George, you're out there?
Do you want me to do attendance?
Yeah, if you would, please, Laura.
Miss Aquino,
Muted, Denise. She says yes.
Mr. Bednar, Ms.
Yes.
Cardamone, Domingue Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Ms. Pyden,
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, I'd like to call to order the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education meeting for October 5th, 2020. Meeting time will be 6:31, and we will waive the pledge this evening. We'll move to item B, additions, deletions. We have none this evening. C, recognition presentations, Mr. Roberts.
There are none this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have from the community. So I believe we have 5 people here this evening that want to speak to the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sarah Monyer-White to get them on board, and we'll hear the comments this evening.
That is correct. Our first speaker from the community is Richard Werner.
Okay, Mr. Werner. Mr. Werner, if you're out there, if you'd unmute and please address the board. Mr. Werner?
There
Here we
you
go.
go.
Hello,
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
Okay, Mr. Werner, I hear you loud and clear out here. Please send your comments to the board.
All right. Well, I was a part of the meeting on last week, and I'm still very disappointed in the decision that eventually came out that the meeting had, you're going to start sending the kids back to school in person in some capacity, even if it is a hybrid 2 days a week. You still hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Okay.
Please continue.
I'd like to know why we're still doing the in-person then online meeting. If you're comfortable sending the kids back to school, why is an online setting still necessary? I kind of confused on that. If you're comfortable with kids being next to each other, why aren't you just doing a live stream from, say, your conference room or your boardroom or whatever the administration building is? You're asking the kids to do something that I really don't see anybody else doing. Same thing with the IEP meetings that would have been set up in the other meetings. Those are all still being
Frank? Hey, Frank.
Hello?
Are you still there?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay, was there further comments you wanted to make this evening, sir?
again, with the IEP meeting still being in person, and I just really still do not think it's the right time to start sending the kids back. And even the president and all the precautions that are being taken still shows that this is still a real threat to everybody out there. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, for your comments this evening. Okay, Mrs. White.
Our next speaker from the community is Angela Gerard. And it takes just a couple seconds for them to be able to get in the meeting and unmute.
Okay, I will stand by for a second here. Okay, Ms. Gerard, are you out there?
Oh,
hello, Ms. Gerard.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Please address the board.
Okay, I'm sorry. When I was listening to it, the other gentleman was still speaking, so it must be a lag. Okay, are you ready?
Yes, please begin.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to thank you for your votes to take the first step in sending these kids back to school face-to-face last week. I believe it's the best plan to start until we can stop forced masking of young children. I would like to repeat and reiterate what I had to say about masks last week. I implore you, now that you might have more control over it, please reconsider mask-wearing expectations, especially for younger kids. I'm begging you to research and check oxygen levels under a child's mask. When I watched this myself, like I said, levels were subpar, could be dangerous for some and not to OSHA standards. Many kids developing severe mask rashes. An ER nurse reported seeing a rise in fungal and bacteria infections around the mouth, along with extremely contagious viruses such as hand, foot, mouth in young children. Think of all the touching and then touching their masks and faces constantly. There will be more spread and detriment of all things through touch than there would be airborne when it comes to elementary kids. Again, Emmanuel Lutheran in Macomb has had no masks in the classroom for pre-K through 5th grade and all their students back 5 full days a week for over a month with no issue. I have personal friends who are medical doctors who have said unless you have a medical grade mask, it is worthless, and the general masking of our society does more harm than good. Again, I understand that the country is divided and there are intelligent people on both sides, and the public schools' hands have been tied thus far with our governor's excessive abuse of power. In light of Friday's Michigan Supreme Court ruling, I ask you even more strongly, please consider at least no mask at the desk, remembering they are already social distanced. Technically and legally, this should be completely a parental choice. With this division, those of us, including doctors and experts, who feel we are following the science that masks do more hindrance than help in most cases, feel we are compromising by participating in wearing masks at all. I feel it's not too much to ask for some compromising on the other side. Even if you support ideas that masks and social distancing are making a difference in the name of safety, there should still be no reason children should have to wear them when sitting apart at their desks. There are already schools this week standing up and declaring no masks in the classroom on the elementary level. Again, fear and anxiety are definitely now the main drivers of policy, not this virus. We are being conditioned to live in fear of the slightest risk. There are greater risks presented in many other daily activities we all partake in. Decisions should never be based on inflated number of positive cases, but rather severity of illness, and those stats show extremely low to almost no chance of becoming seriously ill. The CDC just updated their case fatality rate last week, posting on their site, it is less lethal than the flu, even for 50 to 69-year-olds. We do none of this for the flu, 99.9% plus survival rate for 0 to 69-year-olds. We used to call this excellent prognosis in the field of medicine. Really seems we are focusing on the wrong numbers and putting our district kids at a disadvantage. We have researched and know our risks and wholeheartedly believe the benefits outweigh the risks for face-to-face. And for us, we believe the benefits outweigh the risks schooling without forced masking. As I've said before, no one loves our kids more than we do as parents. Also still having trouble comprehending why any parents pushing virtual should be allowed a voice at this time. They had a choice and ours was taken from us. I am also in full support of plans being put into place for our...
Ms. Gerard, but I just wanted to, I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to give that 1 minute warning.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I am also in full support of plans being put into place for our 6th to 12th grade students and hope nothing will stand in your way of moving forward. Thank you again for hearing and considering what I have to say. I plead with you again, please, please, please dig deep for the truth in a world where truth is hard to find, and stand up for what's right, even when it's not easy and it's unpopular. Be the district to make a difference. Again, our struggling families, students, and teachers are counting on you. This is not okay, and we can do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gerard, for your comments again this evening. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker from the community is Pamela Simone.
Hello, Ms. Simone.
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Simone. Thank you for making comments to the board this evening. Go ahead and begin.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. I actually was not planning on calling today, except as you know, there's so much rhetoric going on the Chippewa Valley Online Parents Facebook page, and I had called the district office today, and they actually suggested for me to call. So obviously my concern is the masks, and what's all over the page is you have a couple gentlemen who I believe talked to a couple of your board members, and they suggested that you're making threats out there for any kids that don't comply with the mask rule, that they're going to be sent home, suspended, or expelled. So of course I take issue with that, as I'm a parent. I have a 10-year-old, and my issue is with the masks at their desk. Now, first thing I'm going to bring up is safety for the students. I have a very severe food allergy, and the first thing that teachers are told with food allergies to watch, especially the peanut allergies, which you know, is a high rate of students, and that's why, there's not allowed to have food treats in the classrooms or for birthdays, anything. So the first thing teachers are told is to watch for the lips, swelling of the lips, blueness of the lips, because when you have a severe food allergy, such as I do, I cannot speak. My airway starts to close. If you have a child who is suffering a food allergy and raises their hand, the teacher's not going to realize what's going on with this child because they have a mask over their face. So not only does that make the safety of that child, who will die, not catch a flu, but will die, is at risk. You also have, the school, the district, at monetary liability because you caused it. And you also have all these other students who are going to sit by and watch a child pass away because they are unable to breathe. So that is a big issue that I do have, because trust me, it almost happened to me at a restaurant with Dakota High School homecoming, all of them around me. So that's number one. Number two, I am so sick and tired of the politics being involved with these decisions. Now, it made me very sick and disgusted that one of your board members, wants to post on her Facebook page disparaging remarks about our president, or has made comments to other parents about our president. This is not our president's fault. The district made the decision. The district needs to stand by them. In August, when you made the plan for the hybrid, there was not a mask mandate. Parents knew at that time kids were required to wear a mask to their desk, not at their desk, but to their desk. That is what we made our decisions on, to keep our kids out of the CVAA, but leaving them open for the option for the hybrid. That was my main decision.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to give you a 1-minute warning if you could wrap it up in the next minute. So, thank you.
Okay.
Please
Cool.
continue.
Then let me go to the facts about the masks. Okay. American Lung Association says The only masks that are really effective when it comes to this virus is the N95, which should not be worn long term. Okay, and those they want to keep for obviously frontline workers. The surgical masks, which are what most of the kids that are going to be wearing in school, the surgical and the cloth masks. Surgical masks are less effective, and cloth face coverings are even less so in protecting the wearer. Okay, now we understand any kind of reduction in transmission is important, obviously, but when they're at their desk and they're spread apart, there's no reason for them to have to wear that mask all day, because it's going to do more harm to these students who are wearing the mask than it is to anybody with them not wearing the mask. And my child deserves safety. So if you're not going to keep my child safe at this school, we're going to have a problem, and there will be a lawsuit. I'm just letting you know that.
Okay, Mrs. Simone, the minute is up. So I want to thank you for your comments this evening and sharing them with the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Ms. White.
Excuse me, Bill Polkowski is next.
Okay.
Let you into the meeting if you want to go ahead and unmute, Mr. Polkowski.
All right, Mr. Polkowski. Mr. Polkowski. Mr. Polkowski, if you're out there, unmute yourself, please, and let us know you're there. Mr. Polkowski.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Thanks for joining us this evening, and please go ahead and share your comments with the board.
Sure, thank you. Hello, my name is Bill Polkowski. My wife and I have 3 daughters in Chippewa Valley school systems. Hello?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No worries.
Our oldest, Annabelle, is a freshman at Chippewa Valley High School. Sophia attends Wyandotte Middle School, and our youngest, Hope, is in kindergarten at Miami Elementary. I want to thank Elizabeth Pyden for her vote last week. I would also like to thank the teachers.
Mr. Polkowski, you're not allowed to identify school personnel or direct board members. So if you wanted to thank a board member for their vote or something, but please do not use names during community comment. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, she was the only one. I would also like to thank the teachers who have done a wonderful job so far with my girls. Despite having 2 working parents, our children have not only been able to keep up with school, but are striving in a safe online learning environment. I know this isn't the case for a few squeaky wheels, but it's the safest option given the current state of affairs. I teach at Macomb Community College. Our institution took it upon itself to commit to online learning till fall of 2021. The administration made this decision with the health and well-being of their students and staff in mind. Macomb was not willing to gamble with the lives of their adult students. Yet, the Chippewa Valley School Board was able to disregard the safety of children in their vote. Last week, as I listened to the school board meeting, I was dumbfounded when the board voted to gamble with our children's lives without a vaccine in place, and knowing that a Chippewa Valley Schools facility was closed due to COVID. I was disappointed that the pressure of a select few parents or threatened denied funding would entice you to risk not only the lives of children, but your own staff. I am no longer dumbfounded. I am now saddened and angered that the board is no longer gambling, but intentionally threatening children's lives. My wife and I not only learned that there was a COVID case at our daughter's elementary, but that the school is considered a hotspot with multiple cases. My statement now changes to open-ended questions that I fully expect to be personally answered by each board member. How can you possibly go forward with in-person learning now having multiple staff members test positive at multiple school locations? In spite of the governor being stripped of her executive powers, will the school protect the students and make masks mandatory? When this ill-fated experiment inevitably fails and you are forced to go back online, how do you plan to make up the time lost in unneeded multiple learning transitions? Those are my questions.
Okay, is that the completion of your comments this evening, Mr. Pukowski?
Yes, those were my questions.
Okay, well, we appreciate you sharing your comments with us this evening. This is White. Next speaker, please.
We did have one more speaker register, but I'm not seeing him in the meeting, so he may have changed his mind this evening. So that is all we have for community comments tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mr. Polkowski's still there. I just wanted to remind him also that it's not a question and answer period. It's just a chance for the community to make comments to the board. So, okay, thanks again for our callers this evening for your comments to the board, and I'm sure we'll be listened and we'll think about what you had to share with us. Thank you again. Okay, we'll move out of community comment at this time. And we'll move to item E, general consent agenda. Can we have a motion for the general consent agenda?
I'll move.
I'll support.
Moved by Ms. Cardamone, supported by Ms. Hayden. Are there any items that the board wishes to have removed or make comment on, questions about this evening? Hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Cardamone, please.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Pyden. Ms. Pyden.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Bednar.
Yes.
Ms. Mizak.
Yes.
Mr. Patzert.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Ms. Cardamone, I believe we have a retirement resolution this
We
evening.
do. The resolution reads, whereas Cindy Emmy, Robert Newvine, and Mark Farrow have served the Chippewa Valley School District faithfully and diligently for a period of 31 years as a parapro and clerical, 26 years as a teacher, and 26 years as a teacher, respectively. Whereas Cindy Emmy, Robert Newvine, and Mark Farrow, through their leadership, have had a positive impact on the staff, students, and the community. Whereas Cindy Emmy, Robert Newvine, and Mark Farrow, conscientious, loyal, hardworking employees, have elected to retire. And whereas Cindy Emmy, Robert Newvine, and Mark Farrow will be missed by all their school colleagues. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District, not only on their behalf, but also that of the Superintendent of Schools and the administration, extend their thanks and appreciation for a job well done, as well as best wishes for the future. Be it further resolved that this resolution, having been adopted by the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District on the 5th day of October, 2020, be made a permanent part of the records of the school district, and a copy sent to Cindy Emmy, Robert Newvine, and Robert Farrow as expression of our appreciation. Congratulations to all of them.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and now we also have, I guess, two teachers we're hiring here. I don't know if they were out there watching the meeting tonight. Aubrey Hantan and Cassidy Marcinkowski. I don't know if you're out there. Okay, well, we welcome you to the district, and perhaps another meeting we may have a chance to meet you. Okay, moving on to F, old business. We have none this evening. G, new business. Okay. G1, approve Red Ribbon Month resolution. Mr. Roberts.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Bednard. The recommended motion that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve the resolution for Chippewa Valley School District to observe October 2020 as Red Ribbon Month.
I'll make the motion.
Motion moved by Ms. Quino.
I'll support.
Supported by Ms. Pyden. Rationale, please.
Rationale. October is celebrated as Red Ribbon Month across America. Red Ribbon Month is an effort to raise national awareness of youth drug use. Chippewa Valley Schools recognizes the dangers to our students of tobacco, alcohol, and other drug use. The Chippewa Valley Coalition for Youth and Families, a coalition of school, parents, and community, and the Interfaith Chippewa Valley Schools Partnership, a coalition that links the school district with local churches, is working to support the drug prevention education efforts of Chippewa Valley Schools. By approving the resolution, the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education is promoting school, parent, and community awareness of the issues of youth drug use and supporting school and community prevention efforts. And Mr. Bednard, I'd like to read the resolution, please. It'll just take a minute here. I think it's an important one.
Absolutely.
Okay. The resolution reads, whereas youth use of alcohol, marijuana, other drugs, vaping, and prescription drug abuse is a serious problem across our nation. Whereas October 2020 is Red Ribbon Month, a national celebration to promote a drug-free America. Whereas Chippewa Valley Schools recognizes that the combined efforts of parents, students, school, and community are needed to address the alcohol, marijuana, vaping, other drug use, and prescription drug abuse of our students. Whereas the Chippewa Valley Coalition for Youth and Families, a school community coalition, is working to support Chippewa Valley Schools' ongoing drug prevention efforts. Therefore, be it resolved that October 2020 will be celebrated in Chippewa Valley Schools as Red Ribbon Month. Red Ribbon Month will be dedicated to educating our student, staff, parents, and community about the dangers of youth use of alcohol, marijuana, vaping, other drugs, and prescription drug abuse, and to promote safe, healthy, and drug-free youth. Be it further resolved that this resolution, having been adopted by the Chippewa Valley Board of Education on October 5th, 2020, be announced to the public and be made a permanent part of the records of the Chippewa Valley Board of Education.
Questions or comments by the board? Okay. Hearing none, roll call vote. Ms. Cardamone, please.
Ms. Aquino,
Yes.
Ms. Biden,
Yes.
Mr. Bednard,
Yes.
Cardamone, yes. Ms. Demingsack,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Mr. Soba,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving to G2, approved student computer purchase. Mr. Sutherland.
Recommended motions that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education approve C-High Computer Project Products Incorporated for the purchase of 9,300 student computer systems at the cost of $5,347,500.
A motion?
I will make that motion. This is Denise.
Moved by Ms. Aquino,
I'll support Soba.
supported by Mr. Soba. Rationale, please.
Aggressive pricing was obtained through public bid 16.2021. The proposal was reviewed and approved by the technology and purchasing offices. Funding will come from the use of the coronavirus relief funds in the general fund for this purchase. And this information was reviewed earlier this evening with the board technology subcommittee. And this is within the budget parameters for the corona relief funds. And Sarah can answer any questions or comments that you might have about this purchase.
I have a question. Do we know when these are going to be delivered other than prior to December 31st of this year?
The estimate is 4 to 7 weeks. But the bid does specify they need to be here by December 18th in order for us to process that and meet all the requirements of the CARES Act funding. So that's one of the reasons we brought it to the subcommittee as well as the full board this evening to make sure we have as much time as possible.
Maybe Sarah, you could give just a little background on the different bid, just a little bit, going to the I3 from the I5 and bumpers and so on, just real quick.
Sure. The base bid asked companies to bid for the device as well as a 5-year warranty, which is standard in our district. We always bid a 5-year warranty, along with accidental damage, which we knew we may not be able to afford. So we also asked that they provide several alternates in pricing. We received 10 bids. One was late, so we only looked at 9, and all of them were really over budget. So again, we kind of expected that with asking for 5 years of accidental warranty. So we had to look at the alternates that we had asked companies to approve. So we made really 2 decisions to bring this project within budget. One is moving from an i5 processor to an i3 processor, which is slightly lesser, but we feel accommodates the average student needs. Students who are doing graphics or CAD programs have high-end computers in the classroom. So these laptops would not replace those. It would not be, they're not made for high-end video gaming or graphics. They're made for work and online browsing, which is what our average student would use them for. The other option we looked at to bring the price within budget is the warranty. We are proposing a different type of warranty than we normally use. It's an off-site warranty. It's basically a mail-in program, and it's only 4 years instead of 5, but it does include unlimited accidental damage coverage as well as break fix coverage. So a student could drop their laptop 10 times in 4 years, and we would ship it off to have it fixed every time at no extra cost to us. And that program also includes, it's not really a full case, but it's almost just like corner covers. So we think that'll really help increase the longevity of those devices and keep them working. And because by making those choices and bringing it in budget, we can purchase a good amount of spares to keep on hand. The mail-in program, one of the drawbacks is it does take 5 to 7 days to turn around that device, to mail it out, get it fixed, and get it back. But we would have spares on hand, so students would be able to check out a spare to use until their assigned device was fixed. Mr. Bednar brought up that in subcommittee, the 3,000 computers that we ordered about a month ago, we did not get accidental damage on because it really made them unaffordable. But maybe talking with this company, because this mail-in warranty wasn't offered to us at this time, maybe checking to see if that program could be applied to these other 3,000 we purchased, and if that would be something we could budget for. So we can look into that and see if that is something we could add to those.
Questions or comments by the board? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please. Ms. Cardamom.
Ms. Aquino,
Yes.
Mr. Soba,
Sorry, yes.
Ms. Aquino, I'm sorry, Mr. Bednar,
Yes.
Cardamone, yes, Ms. Deming Zach,
Yes.
Mr. Patser,
Yes.
Ms. Pyden.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Butler. All right, we'll move on to H, union communication. I don't know if we have any union leadership out there that wants to address the board this evening.
No.
We do have Kelly Geck here.
No, there's nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Good. Is there anybody else from the union out there that wish to address the board?
Do not see any other union leadership on the call.
All right, thank you. I'll move on to item I, administration reports. Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, we have quite a few things to talk about in this section of the agenda. And I'm going to start with something light. I really want to extend my congratulations to our retirees tonight, Cindy Emmy, Bob Newvine, and Mark Farrow. Those are all wonderful employees. Cindy may have the toughest job being the secretary at an elementary school. It's not easy work, and she's been an exemplary employee for many years. And I can say the same about both Robert Newvine and Mark Farrow. Bob Newvine teaches PE at Ojibwa Elementary, and I know he's well loved by the students. I've been in his classroom a number of times, and it's a fun place to be. And then also I want to congratulate Mark Farrow, who teaches social studies at Dakota High School. And I've known Mark for a long time because when he came to the district, he came as a PE teacher. And I was principal at Miami, and he was the PE teacher there for at least a year. So congratulations to all three of them. I also want to recognize our coalition. Tonight, I did a resolution for Red Ribbon Month, and this is all organized by our Coalition for Youth and Families. And many people in our community are not familiar with it, but it's one of the few coalitions statewide that operates out of a school district, and the work that they do for our school is very important. And sponsoring Red Ribbon Month is just one piece of it. They have 150 students in the Coalition Teen Council, and these kids are committed to creating a drug-free school experience in Chippewa Valley. And I really have respect for those students, because stepping out in a way like this is not an easy thing to do, because you're really making your values known. And for kids in high school, that's not always easy to do. So I really applaud that group. I applaud Dr. Charlene McGunn, who leads the coalition. And they adjust with the pandemic and our move to a remote setting. They have many activities planned for the month of October that will take place remotely. So they didn't fold up the tent and say, we're going to wait till we're in person. They got creative, and they have a lot of good activities to promote the importance of staying drug and alcohol free to our students. In fact, part of that will entail sending information to parents at home, because that's really where the most important conversations take place, is between parents and students. And I know with the busy lives people lead, sometimes it's easy to forget the importance of having those conversations. So it's great that our coalition reminds parents of that, because we all have the same goal. So congratulations to our coalition and to our 150 teen council members on our 2 high schools. So our next topic is masks. And that is a polarizing topic. I mean, we see that everywhere. And I think something took place on Friday when the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that Governor Whitmer's executive orders since April 30th were illegal. And many of those executive orders related to school district operations. So I think over the weekend with that happening, I'm sure social media was quite busy with people conjecturing on what that means in schools. And that means that since that was ruled illegal, that masks would not be a part of schools. So I just want to speak to that this evening, because I really want the community to understand the district position, whether people like this position or do not like this position. I think it's a good place to start related to that is to understand the district position, because I think there were people saying, well, then that just ends it over the weekend. So I just want to go through a few things so that's really clear. The requirement to adopt an extended COVID-19 learning plan was really not a part of the executive order. It was part of legislation that was passed by the House and Senate and then signed by the governor into law. And this is part of the Michigan School Aid Act. Therefore, the district's extended COVID-19 learning plan approved by the board last week remains in effect. It complies with the requirements of the law, and it will be implemented in Chippewa Valley schools. Now, furthermore, although the executive orders have been ruled to be invalid, Chippewa Valley does have the right and obligation, pursuant to the revised school code, to implement reasonable rules and regulations to promote the health and safety and welfare of students in our district. So as a result, the district will continue to enforce the face covering requirements that are included in the district extended COVID-19 learning plan and the district's return to school guidelines. Now, I think we're all aware, and maybe more so this weekend, that COVID-19 continues to be a real health concern for our district. Regardless of the legal reasons as to why Governor Whitmer did not have the authority to issue the executive orders that she did after April 30th, Chippewa Valley will continue to review its legal obligations as the details of the effect of the Supreme Court's decision are more thoroughly vetted by legal counsel. And believe me, at this building, at this level today, we've been in contact with our attorneys who represent our school district. I attended a webinar, a statewide webinar, We had one-to-one conversations with our attorneys, so that's going on throughout the state because I know that there are a lot of questions being asked like right now. So we do know that the Supreme Court's decisions need to be more thoroughly vetted by legal counsel, and we'll continue to monitor, we will continue to monitor updates as they come available to us. However, unless something is ordered or enacted that states the safety provisions put in place by this district are not allowed under the revised school code or other applicable law, Chippewa Valley will continue to implement its safety protocols with fidelity in order to best promote the health and safety of both students and staff who learn and work in our district buildings. So as if that was not enough today, just prior to this meeting, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services issued an emergency order that's in effect until October 30th, 2020. And there are many things in that emergency order, but one of those is the wearing of face masks in school buildings. So I'm sure over the next week and 2 weeks and even beyond that, there'll be a lot of people looking into this issue. But Chippewa Valley's position is right now, until we hear what we are doing is not legal, we will require face masks in our elementary buildings, K-12. So I'm sure there's a lot more to come on that topic, but that's where we find ourselves today. So does the board have any questions about any of what I've just said? I'll do my best. It's all pretty new.
Board members?
Yes. We good then, Mr. Bednar?
Yeah, I think, everybody's been reading up on it and heard about the order just before the board being started. So I think everybody's kind of still taking it all in at this point, but we appreciate the presentation today, Mr. Roberts. Is there anybody else on the board that wished to speak to Mr. Roberts regarding the mask at this point?
Frank, I have a question.
Mr. Patzer?
Yeah, so Mr. Roberts, there must be some children and families that have special needs and are not able to wear face masks. So how are we making those determinations, or how are they supplying us with the proper information?
Well, I think that any person who thinks that they have a child who might meet the requirements for special needs, they should contact our school district so we can speak directly to them and we can review what needs to be done. There is a form available through the health department that requires attention from a doctor, but the form is maybe requires slightly more than the standard medical form. I mean, I want to stress that it really needs to be pointed out as to what it is medically that would not allow a student to wear a mask in school. So the first thing any parent can do is contact us, and we'll talk to them, and we'll help them through the process.
Yeah, so Mr. Roberts, so now like some conditions, parents can opt out of shots and different kinds of things. What's that? How's that avenue fit this?
Okay, Rob, just hold on for 1 second. You give Ms. Demink-Zek, we lost her. She's trying to get back in. Let's just give her a second here to jump back in with us. Ms. White, maybe you would be able to see when she's back in our lobby.
And we'll keep an eye out for her.
Okay, just give her a minute here.
Looks like she's coming back in.
Okay.
Okay, back to my question, Mr.
Go ahead,
Roberts.
Patrick. Yep.
Yeah, so Mr. Roberts, so some situations, parents sign a form to opt out of like shots in different situations. How are we going to handle this, and what, what's our, you have given any thought on the stand that we're going to take?
Well, we're going to rely on health experts, Mr. Patrick. So if someone completes a form, they need to provide medical documentation as to why a mask cannot be worn by that child. And then we'll have that information reviewed by our staff. And either, you know, any number of things could happen. It could be denied. We could ask for additional information, or it could be approved. But we'll look carefully at all of them. And I think that we need to do it that way because there are medical conditions that students might have that would preclude them from wearing a mask. But this is an important topic to other parents too, because they are concerned about their children who are in that classroom with someone not wearing a mask. So we just want to have a thorough process, but we'll help parents get through it.
Other questions by the board? So, I mean, I guess Ron, I guess I would ask, so, I mean, how are they going to enforce this? I mean, is there going to be a building administrator looking at kids coming off the bus, or how about getting on the bus? I mean, how we count our parents to comply? If there's not somebody that wants to comply, how would we react to that?
Well, Mr. Bednar, that's an excellent question, because we want to honor those requests to have students who cannot wear masks to school for medical reasons. We want to make sure those are taken care of before students arrive at school. We never, ever want to have a situation when a student walks up to our door and we have to say, you cannot go into the classroom. That's why communication between families and our school personnel is extremely critical. And I think that we'll send messages out to parents about this. We do not want a student ever put in a position where they're not prepared to handle it. We will return elementary kids first. Some of these things they don't really understand. For that reason, when we return to school, I think the worst possible thing is that we could have, and I don't expect this really to happen. I think we can address all of these situations. But we never want a student to walk up to the door and we have to say, you cannot go into the classroom. But Mr. Bednar, if we don't have things on file for these students and we have not been given a chance to work through this with our families, that's what will happen. This is a health issue. And so we want to make sure that the protocols are very clear, because really the safety of all of our students and staff is what's important here. But we also want to handle it sensitively with students. So we'll communicate a lot. Any issues that might be need to be resolved between families, we certainly hope to do that before the first day of school. For those students who do not have masks, we'll have masks available on the bus. When kids enter the building, if they've forgotten their mask, we will have masks available for them. We have purchased many masks. We have child-sized masks available. So we can really handle this and help our students feel comfortable coming to school.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. That was a very good answer based on today's climate. Certainly, I guess what you're saying is we're really, as a district, asking our parents who have concerns about mask wearing to really reach out to their local school where their child attends and speak with our staff there to work through this prior to that first day of school next Monday. So that this runs smoothly. Even if you disagree, you can resolve this with our administration prior to the start of school. So Thanks so much for your comments.
Frank?
Yeah, Ms. Guido.
I do have one question. So Ron, if let's say all of the paperwork is in order and the student cannot wear a mask for a medical reason, then will we notify the other students' parents or no?
No, we will not. And we will not because we have to be very careful with HIPAA.
Oh,
and
yeah, right.
identifying someone's medical condition.
But-
I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions asked if the first time that happens and kids go home, because kids will go home and they'll be interested in that because it's different. And we'll deal with questions that come forward from there as sensitively as we can.
Okay, so we can't at least say there will be someone in your child's classroom that may not be able to wear a mask for medical reasons. And then,
No.
because that person then would show up without, I get it. Okay. I understand. Thank you.
And I know to our families, that's difficult. So we're balancing a lot of different laws here, but an individual has a right to privacy. And as I said, kids will go home and talk about it and it will go from there.
Any further questions by the board?
If I could add one further element to that, I don't expect this to be a really big issue at all. I've had conversations with superintendents in Macomb County who have been in school for in-person instruction, their districts have, and this has not been an issue. Kids come to school, they're masked up, they spend their day doing that and taking their mask breaks, and they get through their day, and so it really isn't an issue. So, as much as I say all these things, because I don't want anything negative to result from this, I really don't expect it to. So we should be good.
Okay, yeah, and again, just to reiterate, if you are somebody that has issues with having a mask on your child, please reach out this week to your local school where your child attends, administrators and staff, and resolve this. So as these children come back into school next Monday, it's what it should be. It should be a joyful thing for them to reunite with some friends and be back in our schools with our teachers and staff. So please reach out this week and resolve these issues prior to that first day next week. Okay, Ron, was there anything else from the administration this evening?
Sure, we have a couple more things. I know the board had asked for some information regarding to our what's occurred since we announced that we would go hybrid, with how that relates to the Chippewa Valley Virtual Academy and hybrid. And because we get emails from people sometimes who will tell us they didn't expect us to go hybrid this soon, so they want to go to the Chippewa Valley Virtual Academy and things like that. So let me tell you where we are with this. And this is really not an easy issue, and kind of getting to the end of this issue is going to take some time as we move forward. So let me begin here though. In August, when we asked parents to make a decision, we were very clear, and we stressed the point that with whatever decision was made, there were certain requirements or guidelines that would need to be followed to make changes later in the year. For example, those students who would be starting in the CVVA, the Virtual Academy, would have the opportunity to possibly, and it wasn't guaranteed, leave the CVVA if they were in elementary at the trimester, which is in beginning of December. If they were in middle or high school, it'd be at the semester, and that would be in January. So it was at that time those students would be considered for a placement into the other group of students who began remotely. We did not have guidelines for the group that essentially agreed to allow us to determine, because the other group really said, we're just going to be in that other group. We know that it could be remote, we know that it could be hybrid, or it could be full on in person. And we really thought we didn't have provisions for them to leave that group, because at that time they were essentially saying, I don't want that year-long virtual plan. I'm gonna go with this other option, and that they would trust us in what we decided when we were going to, if we were going to move from group to group. We thought they would be ready for that. So we really weren't prepared for that group wanting a change. So just so this is clear to our board and clear to our community, on our end, I think we did everything we could to help our parents make the best decision they could at the time. But having said all that, I know how difficult this decision has been for our parents. When have they ever had to make a decision like this regarding their child's education? Normally what they do is they bring their child to us in kindergarten. They kind of understand the drill. They know the year-to-year progression. They're ready for that. We don't ask them to make decisions because we have never, and I've been in this district a long time, we've never been in a pandemic, which kind of flipped everything upside down. So we have a lot of empathy for our parents. We understand that even though we laid out what we thought were some real clear things, we understand that the kind of angst that some of our parents are feeling. This is stressful, and it's an ever-evolving situation for our community. And one day you learn something related to this, and the next day you learn something that contradicts it. So, and I'm referring to COVID when I say that. So to get to the point, at this time, there are some parents who are contacting us or their child's school. They would like to make a change as we move into a hybrid format. We have some that want to leave the CVVA and enter the hybrid. Now, that really wasn't our intention, or was it? Our intention was that would happen as a trimester and semester, but some have indicated to us now they want to do that now. And others want to leave the hybrid and enter into the Chippewa Valley Virtual Academy because they don't think it's safe. So scheduling is complex. It is not simple. It is not like taking students and swapping them out and making trades. It doesn't work that way. Movements to spaces into one's home school cannot be guaranteed. So if you're in a virtual academy and you say, now I'm ready to go back to my home school, and that's Erie, we may not have a spot in Erie. Or you have multiple kids and you want them both into their home school. It could be we have a spot in one school but not at one grade level and not the other. So for people who look at what we do and think about scheduling, it's really difficult to understand how that process works and how it is difficult. So we're in the middle of this quarter, and moving kids right now will be extremely disruptive. It will be disruptive to our teachers as our kids are moved amongst programs, because teachers have a class. That's the class they're teaching. They have them at a certain point in the curriculum. They know their class. To now start pulling kids out and putting other kids in, that is difficult for the teacher. Not something that can't be overcome. But this is something we look at when we think about this. And remember, there has never been a time that we have been more empathetic with our parents regarding things like this. I want you to know, I've even heard from parents in the CVVA that for some reason think we're just gonna take kids who are in the remote program right now, who don't want to go to face-to-face instruction, and move them into their children's class and put too many kids in their children's class and kind of disrupt the flow that the teacher has going with those kids. So the thinking on the part of our community and our parents is all over the place. What I'm talking about even becomes more difficult at the secondary level, especially the high school, because students have 6 classes in a day. And quite often, those are classes that they have chosen to have, that they want to have, that they need as part of their plan to graduate. Or they might be in CTE, or they're taking an art class because now they need an art class as part of their graduation requirements. We can't always make schedules that kind of match what they're taking in the virtual academy if they want to go into a hybrid plan. So at this point, this is what we are doing. We are making lists. Once that's complete, we will then see what we can do. And I would not be being honest with you if I said that we can accommodate all of the changes that people want. We will give serious consideration to all of them. But I also know, and this will disappoint some parents, we cannot have this done by Monday at the elementary level. As I said, there are too many moving pieces. And I do want to say, I think I have in this building extremely smart and skilled schedulers. And if they can't figure something out, they have resources that they can go to. So that's kind of where we are with scheduling. As I've said before, it is always our intention to make every parent in this district happy. We are facing a difficult time right now due to what COVID has done to how we do school. But we will look at these and we will see what we can do. And that's the most I can promise right now. And then to the board, what I would say is that we will come back to you in 2 weeks at our next meeting and give you an update on where we are with this. That's it, Frank. If someone has questions, I can entertain them. And if I can't answer them, I know I got the right people here with me.
Any questions by the board? So again, Ron, I think we spoke about this last week at the meeting. Just we are looking first and foremost for folks for medical reasons that hybrid, and that I would imagine that there's probably very few openings, I imagine. So I almost think that probably most of those requests would be honored. Obviously, I don't know how much room we'd have after that, but anyways, we'll look for an update, I guess, at the next meeting. Is there any questions by the board on this? Okay, hearing none. Ron, your next matter.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Bednard. I would say that our medical concerns are our top priority. So, okay. So at our last meeting, we talked about, okay, we're moving forward with K-5. What about 6-12? So that's what we're prepared to talk to you about tonight. We didn't come here tonight to take action on this. We just came to present what it would look like for K-12. So we've had this in the planning stages for quite some time, because really 6-12 was planned right along with K-5. It's just a matter of when we want to implement something like this. So I'm going to turn it over. I believe, is it Dr. Brodsky that's going to lead us off here?
Yes, Mr. Roberts. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, and good evening, members of the board. Is that being shared?
Yeah, you're good.
You see that?
Oh, no, we don't.
Not yet.
Just want to make sure. No? Okay, we'll just make sure that we share screen one and share it. And there you go. So good evening, members of the board. Tonight, the Educational Services team will provide you with information regarding the transition from a remote learning environment to a hybrid instruction model for middle school and high school students. To briefly review, a K-12 hybrid plan was developed during the operations subcommittee meetings this past summer and was presented at the August 3rd board workshop and the town hall on August 5th. In September, the board asked Educational Services to provide a hybrid instruction plan for elementary and special services. The plan was approved for K-5 plus ECSE and K-12 CLP students on October 1st. At that meeting, we were asked to provide a plan to transition middle and high school from remote learning to hybrid instruction. Tonight, you'll hear about secondary schedules and the health and safety protocols that are in place. As you can see, phase 1 will roll out on October 12th, and pending board approval, phase 2 will go into effect during the month of November. Now I'd like to turn it over to Paul Sibley, Executive Director of Secondary Education, who will explain the proposed hybrid schedule for secondary.
Great, thank you, Dr. Brodsky. So in front of you is the hybrid plan that we presented last week. We were talking about the elementary level. So as Dr. Brodsky referenced, the hybrid planning from this past summer addressed all grades, so K through 12. So our hybrid plan for the secondary level has been, in the same preparation period as our elementary plan. But again, it goes back to that phase-in process that we're talking about that has been recommended at every turn. As you're bringing kids back, you should do it in phases and really monitor how it's going at each level. So at the secondary level, we would be assigning students in Group A and Group B, just as we did at the elementary level. That again would be done by utilizing or by using students' addresses, looking at our class schedules, what transportation would look like in certain areas. And we would identify groups A and B based on all of those factors, while also making sure that we can balance our current classes. And so that's a little bit of a different challenge at the secondary level as it would be the elementary. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But as you can see from our hybrid plan, obviously K-12 CLP will already have been returned starting on the 12th. And our secondary principals have been working very hard to be prepared for this hybrid plan when we decide to implement it. Go to that next slide for me, Dr. Broski. And I'm going to move through the next couple of slides a little bit quickly. So the next slide that you'll see here is, again, our return to school guidelines. So all of our return to school guidelines really do apply at all levels. So when we go through those that are posted on our website, you'll notice that they are, I'd say, generic enough that they can be applied to both the elementary and high school levels. Obviously, in all of our level meetings with building administrators, we talk specifically about what these plans would look like, at the high school, for example, or at the middle school. Each building also presents different challenges based on how you're going to implement social distancing, monitor traffic flows, address lunchroom, arrival, dismissal, etc. All things that, again, I will address as we go through this today. Next slide, Dr. Broski. I talked a little bit about this. Mr. Roberts did reference facial coverings, and so we are staying with our plan where we will require facial coverings for all students and staff in our buildings. We will talk about the use of face shields and things if we run into certain situations that we need to. We've had a little bit of discussion of that today, actually, with our district nurse about whether or not we can consider things like that. Tomorrow, I will also be attending another webinar with some legal, excuse me, with a legal team who will be talking about facial coverings. We'll be talking about the recent decision from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and how it's going to impact us specifically in regards to facial coverings. And now we can talk a little bit more specifically about the secondary level. Dr. Broski. So much like Ms. Licari presented, I'm going to take you through some pictures that I've had the secondary administrators send us to show you some examples of what our secondary buildings are doing, which in some cases is very similar to the elementary plan. Here you can see a cafeteria where the seats in the cafeteria have been identified so that students know they'll be utilizing every other seat when they are at lunch. You can't see it too clearly in this picture, but also you'll notice that the identified seats are staggered on each side. So kids will not be sitting directly across from one another. They will be staggered through their rows. While this is going on, our teachers are also working on classroom setups, making sure that seating in each of our secondary buildings really maximize the social distancing to the best of our ability. So that next slide, Dr. Broski, will show you another example. This is at one of our high schools. You can see the top left, same idea. Seats are being identified using every other. Our hallways have been marked so that students know which way the traffic flow should go. In the secondary plan, we will not be utilizing our hallway lockers because that encourages students stopping and congregating or being grouped too close together for periods of time. And so students will be encouraged to carry their books with book bags, much like they used to, which many of them will be very excited about because they can carry their books with them. And again, not all of our classes require textbooks now that we're moving into more a digital age. So it's not a matter of students having to carry around 6 textbooks for all of their classes. And so our students have been carrying book bags to some degree. We've actually been making a transition to some mesh and clear backpacks, as well as students using drawstring bags in our hallways for a number of years now. The next slide, please. So here's an example at Dakota High School where you can see how the cafeteria is set up. In years past, you see the slide on the right, most of our cafeteria tables were always under the overhang, if you're familiar with the Dakota atrium. But you can see what they've done now. They've moved the tables out into the atrium, into the center area where we used to not have lunchroom tables. They're also utilizing the entire north and south length of the atrium to really spread kids out. What you don't see in this picture is that in our plans is that they will also be utilizing other spaces. So our schools will be using For example, at Dakota, at the end of this hallway, at the end of the atrium, there's a community room. And so the community room will also be used for lunch periods. And so the ability to space kids out really is doable in some of our very large spaces. Some of our middle schools will be using either auxiliary gyms, half of their gym, if you will, although they will be using media centers. All of our schools that can will be utilizing outdoor spaces whenever available. We know that our kids will have to dress a little warmer if they want to use them in the cold weather, but we also know that our kids would really, I think, jump to the chance of being able to sit outside with their peers, which is not uncommon when the weather is good. So we will use that a little bit more as we look at social distancing. At the high schools, they're still planning on using every other seat in a model like this. And so at tables that often would hold 10 students, they will only have 5 seated there. The middle schools and high schools will also be using assigned seating, but what they also will be able to access are the cameras. And so in both the middle school and high school, it'll be pretty easy to go back and monitor who students were sitting by, should we ever get put in a position where we have to contact trace in one of our schools. You'll notice the aisles are much wider there. These are some of my favorite ones. There's some definite creativity going on in some of our buildings. So Dakota High School, you see the 2 different pictures here. And again, the reason I'm using a lot of the pictures from Dakota is because Dakota is going to be our most crowded school, even in a hybrid model. So I feel it's important to show that this can be done at any school. And so the picture on the bottom right, or on the right side of this frame, the reason this is a significant area for Dakota High School is it's right before this picture. So it's the picture at the top left and the picture on the right are actually taken from the same spot, if you will, just in 2 different directions. So what you'll notice is that you've got the media center, which is where the glass block is. On the left side of the picture on the right is the entrance into our ancillary offices, where students are often coming in and out throughout the day. And at the end of the hallway, where the glass wall is our counseling office. So this is what we would consider probably one of the highest traffic areas at Dakota High School. So what they've done is create, as I would call it, the Michigan left design here, to prevent kids from actually crisscrossing more often than they might need to. And so they would actually rope off certain areas to make sure that kids can only, if you will, change lanes in certain areas, which would actually work with traffic flows. So you can see our administrators are getting very creative in how they're going to handle this to try to prevent students from being too close. Interestingly, when you talk to the health department, they'll also, in talking to our nurse who talks daily to the health department, the impression that they have and that they give is that passing time, believe it or not, is not one of their biggest concern areas, because students are actually moving in the same direction. They're wearing masks, and they're also not together for a long period of time. So at our high schools, a normal day, you have 6 minutes of passing. So the way the health department, CDC, is looking at contact tracing, they're talking about up to 15 minutes in order to qualify as a close contact. And so our students would not have anywhere near that. But to additionally, still address some of those issues, what our secondary schools are talking about is a staggering release within each hour. So if our bell, for example, was going to ring at 12 o'clock, they might start dismissing segments of the alphabet at 11:58, and then 11:59, and then 12 o'clock, 12:01, 12:02. And so what'll happen is you'll have this staggered release of students, which will create a natural flow. And because students aren't utilizing the lockers and they're being discouraged from congregating, you'll see a pretty steady traffic flow. So students will be arriving to classes as others are leaving. And so there will be, less students in the hallway, because on top of that traffic flow, you're also only having, less than half of the students in the building at any given time because of the AB schedule, minus the students that are in the CVVA. And so you really are looking at, although it will still be a large number of kids in one place, it's nowhere near what it once was. And so you'll be looking at class sizes at the high school, where normally 35 is a max in a high school class. You will see those class sizes smaller than they ever have been. Now, what you can't promise necessarily at the secondary level is an exact split down the middle of every class, because again, every student has 6 classes. And so just trying to adjust and balance a single hour will have an impact on up to 5 other classes. And so that's something we have to always consider. So you're not going to see the perfect 50-50 split, but what you will see are class sizes that will be smaller than they ever have been. at least in our history on average. Go to that next slide for me, Dr. Brodsky.
Mr. Sibley, I'd like to just stop sharing just for a moment because that it's just that is not what this presentation is supposed to look like. So I'm going to just, if you give me just a second here,
no problem.
Let's see if we can make this look a little bit better. Let me see here. Let's try this one here. And
so I'm going to ask a question then of Paul while Dr. Brodsky makes an adjustment here. You mentioned something I think that would be of interest to all students and parents when you talked about the crowded hallways and that.
Sure.
So we've seen before when schools have opened this year, there have been pictures posted right away on social media about, you know, the situation in the hallways and that, and then news media have done stories on that. I just want you to just talk once more and kind of reinforce why that probably will happen because we have a lot of kids and why that isn't something for parents or students to be concerned about.
Absolutely. Actually, when I was, for the board knows this, but for the community, I was a high school principal for 7 years, and spent 18 years at Dakota High School. So, when the first video came out that I saw in the media, I looked at it and I thought to myself, well, I don't know what people would expect, right? So students are going to change classes. So we have large schools. And honestly, in Macomb County, all of our high schools are large schools. And so when students are released into a hallway, the main goal is controlling traffic. Now, I will admit that there were a couple of cases where in other schools, I did see things that I felt could be adjusted because they were bottlenecked into a certain area or because a hallway wasn't moving the way it should be. And those are all things that we are addressing in our plan. But you're absolutely right, Mr. Roberts. If somebody is in the hallway and they're standing behind other students and they raise their phone, like as they will, and they'll take pictures, it's going to look like a lot of students. The way I look at that is that because of our conversation with the health department, the fact that students are moving in the same direction with their masks on, it's really not while it's always concerning, it's not the concern that some want to make it out to be. And the health department has confirmed that with us. And so when you talk about the high schools, for example, let's take Dakota High School, which is the largest school in the state of Michigan. And you start doing the math and looking at a hybrid schedule of how many kids are going to be in the building on a given day versus what it would normally look like, it is very different. And so you talk about a school that has about 2,850 students, I believe is kind of their current number. Obviously and that's including the 9th grade center, which is a separate building. So when you start doing the math and you realize that number then drops to, let's say 26, actually more than that, it's about 2,450 when you remove the CVVA students out of it. You then divide that in half, you get down to about 1,200. You then remove the students from the 9th grade center, which is another 350. You're now talking about a high school that typically has 3,000 students in it on a given day, now servicing about 850 to 900 students. So when you talk about the capacity of a building and you start spreading it out in that way, you start to realize that social distancing is a lot more feasible than many would think it is in a given environment. And so you look at something like our pictures here, we purposely chose probably the narrowest segment of the school. Standing in that hallway, it's still a very wide hallway. And so when you're talking about having less than half of the students in that hallway, it is something that we do believe is manageable.
That's a good answer because after the first day of Kids Back and Paula Tutman calls me for Channel 4, I'll be ready to answer. So thank you.
No problem. Yep. The picture on the bottom left is a middle school, same idea, divided hallways. Administrators and teachers will be helping students understand kind of where they're going. So when you're ready, Dr. Brodsky, we can go to that next slide. So I did decide to look at some of the biggest question marks that I think we would face at our secondary schools. Arrival, dismissal, passing time, hallway traffic. We talked a little bit about this, but our administrators are planning kind of a staggered arrival for students, looking at when buses would be dismissed so that kids can come into the school at a specific time, when our student drivers will be allowed to come into the building, which it would include parents who are dropping kids off, and then how we allow students who are walkers to come into the building, and then where we would place all of these students who get there a little bit early. So what we're talking about is looking at where buses pull up, and then actually having buses release students who will then enter different spots in the building at doors that can still be monitored. So our 2 high schools, for example, and actually our middle schools are following suit with their plans. You know, you're looking at students who are arriving in the building and placing them in areas where social distancing can still occur. They'd be seated in cafeterias, sitting in the atrium at Dakota, sitting in the cafeteria at Chippewa Valley High School, utilizing media centers where students can sit staggered until they're able to go to class. So again, by using different entrances and different entrance times, that will make a big difference in the mornings. Dismissal, students will not be allowed to congregate after school, unfortunately, and so students will be encouraged to exit the buildings unless they have something specific that they are staying for. I mentioned passing time and hallway traffic. So actually all that's already been covered, that is on that slide. And that's actually all. I think I covered all of that while we were waiting. So we can go to the next slide, Dr. Broski. We talked about lunch periods, utilizing every other seat, utilizing multiple spaces, using outdoors, staggered dismissal. We talked about this cleaning we haven't talked about the cleaning protocols at our secondary schools. In the past, it was kind of a, getting close to the bell, kids just started getting up, throwing things out, moving in herds. Now it will be a little bit more of a middle school or elementary approach, which is common, where you'll have more assigned seats. You'll have students who will be dismissed by table. Our lunch monitors, for example, will actually move garbage cans through the aisleways to tables instead of kids going to garbage cans. That way students can be part of the cleanup process. And sometimes they're not. They don't always clean up after themselves the way we want them to. By doing it this way, they'll be part of not only getting rid of their own garbage, but they can also partake. And many kids, working in high school as long as I did, if you ask them to help, they typically will, where they could even help lunch monitors potentially wiping down tables because they're going to want to go. And if they feel that it's going to help them move along, they would probably help wipe tables if we needed them to. But we really don't think that would even be necessary based on the way we would time this out. So our classrooms, we are setting up our classrooms kind of as teachers are teaching. So this is something that's taking a little bit of time, making sure that students are facing the same direction, maximizing our classroom space, really looking at areas where we can remove furniture from classrooms. Much of this has been done, but there are still areas that we're still working through. So kids will be facing the same direction in classrooms whenever possible. Obviously secondary level especially, kids are used to wearing masks. The social distancing piece at the secondary level is, I think, a little bit easier in a classroom, to be honest with you, because you have, our teachers will have less of the activities planned where kids are up and out of their seats because their time will be limited in our standard 55 to 59-minute classes. So the attendance will be taken with strict seating charts so that students and teachers will kind of know where they're expected to be throughout the hour. Our teachers will be encouraged to keep social distance from their students, which will be difficult for them. But I think because they're so used to being so close to kids as they're trying to help them. But I think that in the secondary level, it's something we'll have to take very seriously and help everyone understand that social distancing and seating charts will be extremely important, especially if we get in those situations potentially where contact tracing is necessary. The next slide, Dr. Broski. So last week when we met, Mr. Roberts mentioned a date that we had actually shared with him about potentially November 4th being a potential return date. We've had multiple meetings since then and put a lot of thought into that November 4th date. So if you know our calendar, you know that on November 2nd and 3rd, we're looking at potentially being 2 days of not having kids in school. November 3rd is election day, but it's been a professional development day planned for our staff since the beginning of the school year. The end of that week is also the end of the first quarter. So that would pose some challenges for us if we were to bring kids back midweek at the last week of that quarter. At the middle school level, students would be essentially coming back to school on a Wednesday and attending their specials classes, their elective courses for 1 or 2 days only, and then they'd be switching courses. And so in talking to the middle school principals, while they said that they could do that, They did say it would be a challenge. Our students would be coming in right at the end of a quarter. Our teachers are trying to get grades submitted for the end of the quarter. And now you've got a very, as massive of a change in approach as they've probably ever experienced, going from remote to having kids in classes. At the secondary level, again, it goes back to getting grades in. We talked about, making sure that when we start a quarter, we can start a quarter on a new foot. Really starting that way would make a lot of sense to us. To be honest with you, I think that we have to look at that November 9th date, continue to monitor what's happening in our area. We do see that while our data is getting better, we do have to pay attention to what is going on and how it's going in other schools, to be honest with you. The A/B schedules that we're creating for kids, it does take a little more time to make sure that we are balanced. So while we have been working on this since the beginning of the year, we also had to get through the first couple of weeks of secondary schedules, which was challenging for our schedulers to create full schedules for all of our students who were in either the CVVA or in traditional learning. So at the secondary level, it's not uncommon. Actually, every single year, we start the year where kids don't have full schedules. And usually that first week is spent with some kids coming down to the counseling offices and finishing their schedules. This year, because kids were remote, that took a little longer. It took up to 2 weeks for kids to have final schedules. And so 2 weeks into the school year was only 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so for us, these A/B schedules have been continuously being looked at and worked on. But as you can imagine at a secondary level, as I mentioned earlier, students who are in a particular hour that needs to be balanced, they have to be very careful on which students they're moving, because the movement of one student could then actually impact 5 other classes that student is in. So in our time that we're spending to identify A/B schedules and A/B students, we're working very cautiously through that to identify students that if they were moved from an A to a B or vice versa, it would not impact their other 5 hours. So we would try to keep them as balanced as possible. But we also have to look at students with siblings. And we have to make sure that transitioning or changing one student from an A to a B or B to an A is not going to impact their siblings at different levels. So you would have to try to move siblings at the same time. So this is something that at the secondary level does take a little more time, and something we have to pay a lot of attention to. And so right now, again, in conversation, we are targeting that November 9th as an appropriate date. We also have some disruptions in the school year, obviously getting settled in, making sure that we get through conferences at the high school level. We have 2 testing dates coming up, October 14th and October 29th. And all of these are disruptions. And so our teachers are concerned that with all of the disruptions in first quarter, that they want to make sure they can finish that quarter with as few disruptions at the end as possible. And to me, it made a lot of sense as I'm listening to people talk to me. And so I want to make sure that I'm, keeping the teachers' needs in mind as well. So I hope I didn't go too fast, but that is, essentially I left out a lot of the redundant portions of our presentation because our hybrid model, as we mentioned early on, does apply to a K-12 situation. And so I didn't go through all the details that we've been sharing with you in our last 2 presentations, and I tried to stick with just the ones that were specific to secondary. But I can tell you that our administrators are working their butts off, to be honest with you, to make sure their buildings are ready, to reassure the staff and listen to the staff and take their input on how we can make this as safe as possible for everyone. And that is the conclusion of our presentation. So obviously, if there are questions, we can answer those as best we can at this time. Again, this is not a final plan. This is where we are as far as looking at dates, working with our administrators. As I mentioned before, it's something that should be continuously monitored as far as what's going on in our area.
Is the plan for this to come to the board, our next meeting, the 19th?
Yes.
We will be prepared to.
Yeah.
Okay, I know there's a lot of questions by the board. Why don't we start off with Ms. Cardamone?
You're muted. There you go.
I have a lot.
Okay.
So my first one is why not start out with middle school and then go to high school? Like if we're doing gradual openings, why not phase in?
I'm going to write these down also,
Oh,
Lori.
you want me to say them all at once?
No. I just want to write it down so I can come back and make sure that we're addressing all of these. So we did talk about that, about whether the middle school should come back first or the high school. And really what it comes down to is you do have separate staffs, right? So when you look at secondary, you essentially have the same approach at two different levels. So you've got a middle school schedule that mirrors a high school schedule. What you have at both buildings are situations where some kids are in classes with other grades. So it's less common at the middle school, but I can tell you that there are some students who are serviced, for example, in special education, where they share courses with other grades. So what we realize at the secondary level is when you get into those situations, it would be nearly impossible to have a teacher who is teaching kids in front of them for, let's just say, sixth graders, and then also have the group of seventh graders who are remote. So that teacher would have two different sets of kids they might be trying to service at the same time.
I meant why not start out with middle school, see what kinks need to be worked out of that, and then go to high school?
And we could do that. I guess it depends on how people would look at that. You know, some would say, well, if I was a middle school parent, they say, well, work the kinks out. Maybe I'd rather you start with the high school kids and come down to the middle schools afterward. But I do know what you mean. And I think for us, because our plans are so similar, we looked at it as whether or not we really needed to do that. And so for us, the phase-in was looking at elementary, which really is a different model because kids aren't leaving their classrooms. Whereas in secondary, you are looking at the same model. We talked about, and we are still talking about, whether or not we would bring sixth graders in, for example, a day or two early. Now, we're not making those promises at this point, but I do know it's been brought up to me that the sixth graders would be the biggest concern, if you will, just because they've never been in the building at this point. And because they are making that transition from elementary to middle school, that is a huge jump. And so some of our middle school principals, you know, in our last meeting, they said, well, what if we wrote up some ideas and let's discuss that at our next meeting? And I've highly encouraged that. And so they're going to brainstorm some ideas and they're going to bring that back to the table with me this week. So if there are ideas that work, it's something that we definitely would consider. We talked about the same idea at the high school, but it's actually more complicated at the high school because you actually share grades more often. So even looking at the ninth grade center, for example, ninth graders do share classes with 10th through 12th graders in different situations. So then we said, okay, well, if we do ninth, could we do ninth and 10th? Ninth graders are in a separate building. Could we bring back just ninth and 10th? The problem with that, bringing back 10th grade, they have classes with 11th and 12th graders. So it puts you in the same situation there as well. So while we love the idea, and I think conceptually, Laura, you're absolutely right. Ideally, you bring back just small segments. But the more you kind of put that together at the secondary, you kind of realize they were all in the same boat for the most part as far as how that would look logistically.
Okay, so one of my other ones was the new sixth graders because they are still in a fifth grade mindset. So,
yeah.
You know, you checked another question off.
All right.
My box. When is the SAT testing?
So SAT testing is going to be on the 14th of October and the 29th of October. So we were working with the association, and you know what we've done in the past is we've had what's called late start days, if you recall. So we would test in the mornings, and then we would bring kids in the afternoons. And to be 100% transparent with you, the reason we did that was because of pupil accounting rules. So we brought students in the afternoon because the only way it counted as a full instructional day is if you offered education to all levels. And so you would bring kids in for the last hour and a half of the day so that you could count the day towards your 180 requirement. What I'd say is that it's probably not the best academic day, surprisingly, to your classes that are coming in late in the day for a couple shortened periods. Our teachers have done a remarkable job to make sure it is worthwhile for students. But what we looked at was whether or not it was necessary. So on October 14th, for example, this year, the College Board is not allowing us to do pre-bubbling. So as silly as that sounds, pre-bubbling in the past saved us almost an hour of time on test day because we could print labels that we could put on students' answer documents. They're not allowing that this year. And so with the SAT with writing test, that test was always the longest. And so we weren't actually able to start school until about 12:30, which at the high school level, starting at 12:30, you still left at 2:11. So it was literally an hour and 40 minutes that we would just break up into hours 1 and 2. We would then take the second testing day, and that's when we would kind of mirror that schedule, or I should say balance that schedule by going hours 4 through 6, because it was a shorter test, more time in the afternoon. This is a long answer to your question. I'm sorry, Laura. But now that test on the 14th is going to take an additional hour. So realistically, our teachers, almost an hour, our teachers really wouldn't get done proctoring until almost 12:30, 12:45, and they still have to have a lunch period at that point. And so now you're running into 1:15 or so and only having an hour of the day. To me, that's silly to bring kids in. And I know that our teachers can use that time as a professional planning day. And so we're able to match that day then with the 29th to give our teachers, when they're not proctoring, some time to prepare for a hybrid return potentially, to do different things. But we know that our teachers definitely can use that time based on the hours they're putting in right now. So that's what we're looking at for the 14th and the 29th.
Okay, thank you. My next one, are you setting a ceiling for the numbers of kids in a class? You said you expect it to be almost half, sort of half, maybe close to half, maybe not. Like, is there a number, like no more than 28 or no more than 26 or no more than 30 or like?
Well below that, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to set a number. So I would hate to say we are definitely setting a number, but I'll tell you the numbers that we don't like are 22, 21, 20. So we're all the way down there, if you will. So those are the classes that we're trying to get down. Ideally, what we're trying to do is get every class to 20 or below on one of the A/B days. Okay, and that's realistic. It's not easy, but that's a number we're starting with. If we get to that number, we're going to then still try to go further. So we really are working hard to try to get that number as balanced as possible. But I will tell you that we're looking at every class right now that starts with a 20. Let's just call it that. And so we're trying to get those down as best we can. And in many cases, I think because we started this way, and I should back up a little bit, we started our scheduling with this in mind. So we're proud of the fact that we knew this was one of our 3 options. So when we were building our schedules all the way back in August, this was something that we were doing. We were identifying A and B students as we built our schedules. It's why it took as long, well, it didn't take us too long, but it's why it was as complicated as it was and why they put in so many extra hours to get us ready in time. So we started off in a pretty good place. The problem was at the end when, as I mentioned, we were trying to build those schedules for kids who had the holes in their schedules. Those are the students that put us out of balance. And so now we're trying to accommodate and address those classes to bring those numbers down. So there were very few classes that were actually at 22, 21, and I mean very few. So those are the ones we're working on right now.
Okay, so having my kids in the high school, I know that there's social rules regarding hallway travel. But I'm wondering how it's going to work in terms of like the kids congregating outside their next class, waiting to get in, because that is a long time that they're hanging out. And I guess I don't understand the staggered release, because you're going to have kids still hanging out waiting to get into their next class.
Well, not necessarily.
Dusting the halls and all that kind of thing.
I think because what they're looking to do is almost expand passing time, knowing that you'll be letting students into their next classes, right? So the idea is if you're not moving in the hallway, right, then you should be. So you should be on your way to that next class. So they'll be going into their classrooms, and that's where they'll be going to their seats. Granted, you're right. These are high school, middle school kids, and so it's going to be all hands on deck, to keep them moving. But I think for the most part, our kids want to be in school. And what I've learned in my years, with secondary students is that you can use reason, and it doesn't always work, but it often does. And if students want to be in school, then they'll do their part for the most part to work within the rules. If they don't, then we'll have to address those situations. But I think with our teachers being, worked with our administrators and our administrators being on board and our hall monitors being on board, at the middle school level, keeping kids moving, being out in that hallway, and keeping that flow going, I do think that you'll stop that congregating, believe it or not, outside of the classrooms. And so there will be some adjustment periods that will have to happen. And our administrators have already said, and if this doesn't work, then we'll try something new. But we think that the staggered release will help keeping that flow going.
Okay, so you talked about the teenagers using reason. And that leads me to my question of the lunchroom and assigned seating for, I see that as a nightmare. I don't know how you're like, I don't know how you would do that. Sure. With friend groups changing all the time and hormones and anger and girlfriends and breaking up and getting together. And I mean, it just sounds like a hot mess.
Well, our plan to avoid a hot mess is that we, the middle schools, just so you know, they have been doing assigned seating for as long as I know. So at the middle school, that will not be out of the norm. So that is something they've been doing. At the high school, believe me, we have had a lot of conversation about this. So the way we would approach it is kind of the idea of walking through on day one and students are seated and us kind of setting their assigned seats in that moment. But you're absolutely right, Laura. And so what we talked a lot about at the high schools is the use of those cameras. We know that kids are going to get up, they're going to go move to a table for a second because they want to go talk to this friend who they haven't seen. And a lot of those things are manageable because then we start talking about, what are what is the direction from the health department? They start talking about contact tracing and all of the above, which really is what we're talking about now, being that 15-minute mark within 6 feet of another student. So even at the high school level with some, let's just call it loose, we'll say seating charts at the high school level, you still would then provide yourself that fighting chance to do contact tracing when you needed to. And so that's the idea that we're looking at. And the use of those cameras at the high school will come in handy. They're not looking at being overly strict with it. What they need to do is set up a system of communication with students to say, hey, if you're going to change your seat, let's just talk about it. Because those things can occur. And the utilization of space, the way they are at the high schools, I think there will be a little bit of flexibility in how they can arrange that. But I think students, knowing that there is an avenue, if you will, or a vehicle to make change, that would be the idea. And so I think if students know what our goals are, then hopefully they will work with us on that. It's not going to prevent, you're right, a student getting up, going over to Johnny or Susie and saying hi, talking for a minute, and going back perhaps to their table.
So then my very last question, fellow board members, I promise, is the ongoing concern about staffing, like having the hall monitors, having the rooms cleaned, the classrooms clean, having the bathroom monitors, having, I don't know if I said lunch, hall, like all of those, like, how, and are we going to triple the pay to get people? Or, I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Blanchard, but, I mean, or Mr. Sutherland, actually, like, I mean, how are we going to get the people that we need? Because I know that we don't have them right now.
Well, I think, and your question's a great one. And I talked about the November 9th date. And originally, we'd even thrown out that November 4th date. And one of the things that we have to be completely honest with is that those are concerns. And so we have to look at the elementary hybrid model being rolled out and looking at how that staffing is going to go, and then identifying what it might look like at the secondary level, based on the fact that if we have to move people from secondary positions into elementary positions to make sure that we have the appropriate staffing at the elementary, that is going to be something that we'll have to monitor to determine that opening date for the secondary schools. And so, for me, I'm looking at the idea that we have positions to fill. We do talk to Dr. Blanchard about this. We recognize that staffing is always a challenge. And so it's something that we will continue to talk about and try to remedy. We know that we've had a lot of parents talk about what they're willing to do if we were able to bring kids back, and perhaps some of the things they can do is start applying for jobs. But realistically, it's something that we have to look at. And I don't have a perfect answer for you right now, other than we're aware of that issue. And it's part of why we have a delay between the elementary and the secondary opening. We want to make sure that it's safe, obviously, and to do that the right way is with staffing. And so looking at how we will clean bathrooms and how often we will clean bathrooms is something we have to keep in mind, making sure we have hall monitors and lunch monitors to indeed do the job, looking at food service, all the above. So we are definitely monitoring that, and it is something that we are keeping in consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, we were gonna go in alphabetical order, but I kind of blew that up, so I don't know, who'd like, next board member would like to ask some questions of the cabinet regarding the secondary education plan.
Mr. Bednard, I just have a couple of questions. One is about the 20 students or below in a class. I've noticed that when I was in Dakota, we don't have individual desks, but we have kind of like the dual tables where we have 2 students sitting at a table. If we have 20 students in a class, would that allow for each student to have their own table, or would there be forced doubling up?
If you were in a situation where it was at that 20 mark, for example, Beth, then there could be situations where you might have to have more than one student at one of those desks. And we are talking about what that would look like and whether or not that's even possible. So if students were on the very ends of those desks, you're looking at, I believe it's about 3 feet of distance between the students. And so we have to look at our classroom configurations and get very creative in how we're utilizing the furniture that's in those rooms. So obviously that is something we would try to avoid as often as we possibly can. I will tell you that in a lot of our high school classrooms, though, where that could happen at Dakota, there are other places within those rooms that students can sit. So we do have computer stations in a lot of our classrooms, which was part of our agreement with classroom setups. And so we may have to look at potentially utilizing those computer spaces differently and placing students at those locations. I'll be honest, I've not had a chance to talk to our technology department about this yet, but the idea of even moving computers out of those classrooms to allow them for even more space to be utilized and using tables that we maybe haven't used in the past as student desks to try to eliminate those students sitting together, because that is something that we are looking at, especially at Dakota, where they use tables, as you're mentioning.
Okay. And my other question is actually about technology. So currently we have a mix of students who have received a computer that we've distributed versus students who are using a device of their own choosing. Since we're going to a hybrid, would they be expected to bring those devices to school to also supplement their learning and to get away from the exchange of paper? And if that's the case, would those devices be supported within our classrooms?
Would you like me to address that one, Paul?
That'd be great, Sarah. Thank you.
At least right now, the student checkout laptops from the district do not work in the buildings. The way the filtering was set up, because we only had like 10 days to redo our entire filtering, they only work off-site. So right now, that's really not an option. That's something we'll work through as we move towards the one-to-one. Obviously, those devices will need to be transitioned and work in both places. I think for right now, when teachers are face-to-face, they really should be focusing on doing all the things you can't do electronically. I do love your point about you can use those devices to save paper exchanges and things like that. That might be the kind of thing teachers or students are doing on their days they're not in the classroom. So if teachers are uncomfortable exchanging papers, all that can still be done electronically, but it would be done off-site. It's going to take us a few months to really transition some of the infrastructure and the way we had to do things to make a quick turnaround in March. They're still there. There's some limitations. But it's something we'll definitely work through. But for right now, at least those checkout laptops don't work on site. So we probably wouldn't encourage students to bring in all their personal ones either. Focus on face-to-face when you're with your kids there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions by the board? Other board members have questions? Okay, hearing none at this time, we will move on. Does that do it, Mr. Roberts, for the presentation?
Yes. Yep, that's it this evening. Thank you.
So we'll be coming back for a vote on that on November 19th, our next board meeting.
Yeah, and what we'll do in the meantime too is we'll communicate with you what that looks like, and we'll talk about addressing some of the questions that were asked here this evening. And those are all really good questions, and so we'll see what we can do to make things happen.
We appreciate that presentation. And like you said, it gives us food for thought to think on, chew on for the next few weeks while we prepare for this vote. Probably be very helpful if you could have something prior to the vote again for the community to look at, so they know what we're getting into.
We'll do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, anything on the curriculum updates?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, up and by the board.
This is Jill. I just have two questions. First is regarding food service. Is it still going to be free to the kids that are going back to school as hybrid?
Scott's logging in here. Okay.
Hi, Jill. Right now, we're working on that. We hope that that will be our plan, but there's still a few issues that we have to iron out. But our hope is yes.
Okay. Are they going to be? Will they be off? So, is the issue regarding the free portion, or regarding offering them hot lunch?
We will offer hot lunch.
Okay.
That's not an issue. It's really more about free. And we have to work out some of the details and staffing with that to truly get what we want. We want to make sure that we get it done right before we offer something that we know we can sustain.
Okay. And then my second question was just, is our next board meeting going to still be virtual, or are we meeting in person again?
Okay, I'll address that one. Frank had spoken to me about that, and we're trying to work on that. I think it's a good goal, but we just have a few issues to kind of like figure out for spacing, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been talking already to Diane and Sarah about that. We'll continue the conversations, and I will let you know well in advance if we don't think it can be done, and I'll tell you why. Because there are some things we need to figure out. So just give us a little more time on that. And I'm assuming that's the desire, that's what the board wants to do. Is that, I see some heads nodding that people would like to.
Is there anybody that
well, just we have things like, I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead.
I was saying, is there any board members that do not want to meet virtually? I mean, meet in person, my bad. So I think so. And just like Ron's saying, he's definitely, we're moving in that direction. There's just a few things he has to get through to figure this out right now on a virtual. Because remember when we did it before, we weren't running virtual. We were running with the public with us in the auditorium that one time we had that last in person. This one's different in that the board and cabinet would be together in one room, so to speak, safely distanced with masked. But we'll be broadcasting virtually to the community out there. So we have to have the ability to hear them. We have to have the ability for them to see us, and we can see them, and so on. So there's a couple of hurdles here. We are trying to shoot for the 19th meeting. We're just not sure if we'll be there yet. If not, I would assume right after that we'd be in. So it may or may not be ready for the 19th. And again, Ron said he'll keep us apprised of where we're at with that. Okay. Anything else of by the board? Okay. Hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll support.
Yeah, who moved it? I got it supported by Ms. Aquino.
Beth moved.
Okay, moved by Ms. Pyden and supported by Ms. Aquino. Roll call vote, Ms. Cardamone.
Ms. Pyden,
Yes.
Ms. Aquino,
Yes.
Mr. Bednard,
Yes.
Cardamone, yes, Ms. Deming-Zak. Oop, she's frozen. She said she just got kicked out again.
Okay.
Well, we might as well finish.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have 60, I assume, to adjourn.
She just texted me yes.
Okay.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Ms. Pine, or sorry, and Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Nice to have a 2-hour meeting for a change here tonight. Most important, but again, please, we got to reach out. Secondary questions from our staff coming into the vote. I'm sure there's many issues that we're going to come across the next few weeks as we prepare. But thank you, everybody, for joining this evening, and we'll call the meeting adjourned at 8:24 this evening. And everybody have a good, safe night, and we will be talking to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Good night. Good night.